Greetings, people of the interwebs. Jake here, and in this video I'm going to do something a little bit different. So, over the weekend I was watching a video on Collider, their YouTube channel, which is something I follow pretty much on a regular basis. I watch pretty much all their content. I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't, if you're not familiar with them. But anyways, on weekends they do this thing called Mailbag, where essentially it's just fan-submitted questions and they answer them to the best of their abilities. And someone asked a question to the two hosts, what if Marvel hadn't sold the rights to Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and a lot of the other properties to all the other studios like Fox, Sony, Universal, and there might have been another studio or like smaller studio or two that maybe got some of the rights to some of the characters, but it was mostly Sony and Fox that got the rights to a lot of the heavy hitter characters. And I thought it was a really interesting question because, first off, just a little bit of background information. The reason why Marvel sold the rights, the cinematic rights, is I think it was the late 80s or real early 90s. Marvel was basically going bankrupt, and they needed a quick way to make money, so they sold the cinematic rights to a lot of the characters to all these film studios. So basically, they paid Marvel to, so that way they could make a Spider-Man movie or X-Men, Fantastic Four, or whatever. And obviously, Marvel would get residual income from the profits of the Marvel Comics company would get residuals from the profits the movies made. So that's just the background information on why they sold the rights. So realistically, if they hadn't sold the rights, Marvel probably would have gone bankrupt, like completely bankrupt, and who knows whether they would still be a company, or what would have happened there. But they proposed the idea of just like, okay, let's just say that Marvel wasn't going bankrupt, and they figured out something else to where they didn't go bankrupt and they didn't sell off the cinematic rights. And they were like, would the MCU, one, even exist, and two, how would it have been shaped? I thought that was actually a really interesting question and something that kind of got me thinking, because a lot of people imagine, because the whole thing is the Marvel Cinematic Universe started with characters like Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, and honestly, before the MCU, a lot of these characters were like B, C-level heroes. And then, of course, they've continued with Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, who, again, these are like, not in terms of quality, they're like, B, C, and some of them might even be D quality, especially with like some of the TV shows, like Luke Cage, Iron Fist, just in terms of recognition and, people's familiarity with them. Pretty much everyone knows Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four. Even if they're not comic book readers or know anything about them, they've at least heard the names. So Marvel, when they created the Marvel Studios, they didn't have their heavy hitters. So they were kind of like, what do we have? And thankfully for them, and I imagine when the people got together, they're like, well, okay, we don't have any of the X-Men characters. We don't have any of the Spider-Man related characters or Fantastic Four related characters. But what we do have are Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hulk, Hulk's rights are still kind of weird. That's a whole other thing that I could get into later. But more or less, they had the founding team of the Avengers in the comics. And granted, the roster is a little bit different from the original lineup from the comics, because Ant-Man and the Wasp were actually some of the original founding members, or Hank Pym Ant-Man, I should clarify. Or some of the founding members of the Avengers in the comics. But I think it made sense to hold off on Ant-Man and go with characters who, again, maybe B to C level characters, but they at least had some familiarity to comic readers. And obviously, it's just proven successful because the first Iron Man film blew everyone's expectations, blew everyone out of the water, and here we are today, where we have Doctor Strange. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy, 2 Guardians of the Galaxy films, an Ant-Man film, and tons of other movies and TV shows of these kind of lesser-known, obscure characters, and they've all just been, for the most part, really good. And even if the movies aren't so good, the characters themselves or the actors playing them, I think for the most part have been good. But that kind of got me thinking. If, and again, this is just my opinion, it might be a little controversial, but let's just say that, again, Marvel Studios, they started building their cinematic universe around the same time, like probably around like 2008, or 2007, 2008 is around they started developing all this, and I honestly don't like. I would say one, the Marvel Cinematic Universe probably wouldn't have gotten started for. Wouldn't surprise me even if it was a little later, just because. Honestly, I feel like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is kind of what really cemented the superhero films as genres. Because we had, superhero films here and there, throughout the decades, but they were very kind of sporadic. You had the Superman films from the 70s, they went on until the 80s, and then you had Batman, which went on until the 90s. But even with those massive name properties like Batman and Superman, they were very hit or miss. And we had some, there was some 90s Marvel films like Captain America, Fantastic Four, Hulk. There might have been a Thor movie, or maybe he was in one of them, but they just looked awful. I haven't seen them in their entirety, but I've seen bits and pieces, and it's just awful. But one of the main reasons why Marvel has been so successful with the MCU is Kevin Feige. And one of the reasons for that is Kevin Feige literally worked on pretty much all the Marvel movies, all the first 3 X-Men films, the first 3 Spider-Man films, Blade. He even worked on the first Blade, X-Men, Daredevil, X2, Hulk, the 2003 Hulk film by Ang Lee, not the MCU one. The 2004 Punisher film, Spider-Man 2, Blade Trinity, Elektra, Man-Thing. Didn't even know there was a Man-Thing movie, but he was involved. Fantastic Four, X-Men Last Stand, Spider-Man 3, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. And then, of course, that's when we get into the MCU with Iron Man in 2008, Incredible Hulk, and he even worked on the 2008 Punisher Warzone film as an executive producer. So essentially, he's been heavily inundated with Marvel properties for basically the last 15 plus years. And I think him being a producer, executive producer, and basically just being involved with the Sony and Fox Marvel films, I think that was a good, again, him being in the studio system for so long and just seeing what worked, what didn't work with, this film compared to that film. I think that's what really allowed him to hone his skills for when they started the MCU to kind of be like, all right, look, again, we don't have the most well-known, most popular characters, but that means we got to tell really good stories with these characters, and we have to just really focus on quality, content, because for better or worse, with characters like Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, again, we've had some really good ones, and we've had some not so good ones, because, and even X-Men, because those properties just sell. You slap the name Superman or Batman on anything, and it's pretty much guaranteed to make money. Whereas Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, not as much. So I think that's the key factor as to why the MCU has been working so well, is because, again, Kevin Feige's been with, and that's even why he got promoted to a producer on all these films, is his knowledge of the Marvel Comics. So let's just say that even Kevin Feige's still involved, but and they're starting the MCU again, whether it was around the same time, like around 2007, 2008, or maybe later. Which honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in this what if scenario, the MCU didn't get started until a little bit later, just because again, we wouldn't have had, because X-Men is what really kind of, I would say what really kind of started the superhero. Kind of got the gears in motion, because again, X-Men started the kind of first big wave of superhero films, and we had the Spider-Man, Daredevil, and some of the other films. But again, if Marvel didn't sell the rights, then Fox wouldn't have had to make those movies. That's the whole reason they made X-Men, Spider-Man, all those other films, is that way they could retain the rights to make the movies and make a crap ton of money off of them. But again, if Marvel hadn't sold the rights, they would have just been sitting on their comic book properties, and they might have adapted them into to movies at some point. But I feel like it could have been a lot later. But let's just stay under the time frame of they're like, all right, let's build our own cinematic universe based on our comic book properties. They started around the same time, 2007, 2008. I don't think they would have started with Iron Man. They definitely would have started with Spider-Man and X-Men. Because, again, those are just two of the most well-known Marvel properties, and that's where you have some of the most popular Marvel characters. So, I think they probably would have done, let's just say hypothetically, they start with the Spider-Man film, 2008. That's the first MCU movie, and they laid down some Easter eggs and, kind of hints that there's more to come, then it's all connected. Then let's just say the next year, or maybe even the same year, because the Incredible Hulk film and Iron Man both came out in the same year. So let's just say Spider-Man came out first, then they released X-Men. Both really well done, critically well received, they made a lot of money. So then, of course, they make sequels to Spider-Man, X-Men, and then they probably that's when they start to branch out into, Fantastic Four, because, again, that's more well-known, or at the time, more well-known than, to most people than Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and all these other characters. So I think we probably wouldn't have gotten an Iron Man film or even an Avengers film, I would imagine, until much, much later in this what-if version of the MCU. Because, again, they had their heavy hitters, the most well-known characters, and there's just so much to explore with just the X-Men alone. You've got a lot of great source material, a lot of great characters that you can easily do just a single franchise off of, which is, again, what I think Fox are finally realizing the potential with the Dark Phoenix movie that they're working on. There's rumors that they're going to go into space, and they're going to be dealing with the Shi'ar Empire, which is awesome because the Dark Phoenix saga is a really cool storyline, and I never would have thought the Fox side of Marvel ever would have gone into space or dealt with the more cosmic elements. But again, I think nowadays we suspend our disbelief with these comic book movies. Again, the fact that all these Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, Captain America, all these movies, we're just kind of like, yeah, okay, talking tree that says, I'm Groot. Anthropomorphic raccoon that shoots things and blows things up. A wizard dude who can go into different universes and dimensions. All right, I accept that. So yeah, why not send the X-Men into space? Makes total sense. So yeah, I think they definitely would have put a lot more focus on Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Spider-Man for probably the first. That'd be phase one of this what if MCU that I'm kind of pitching here in this scenario. So I think phase one would have been those movies, and then phase two, that's probably when they would have branched off into the Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and then built up to an Avengers film at the end of phase two, and then maybe phase three would be sequels to Captain America and sequels to all these different franchises. But I think maybe build up to an Avengers versus X-Men or something like that, or maybe just a massive cosmic battle where, again, maybe they're still fighting Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, and we actually do have the standard roster for Avengers with the X-Men, with the Fantastic Four, with Spider-Man, which is just mind-blowing because, again, the Infinity War movie right now already has 60-something characters. So again, imagine on top of Guardians of the Galaxy, the Avengers, Spider-Man, we'll also have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. This would be it would have to be a trilogy or something like that, or a whole completely different franchise to do just the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, or something similar to that. So, I don't know, I just thought that was a really cool a question that kind of just got my mind racing of this kind of what if scenario on would the Marvel Cinematic Universe have even happened, which I do think it would have happened eventually. Again, whether it's around the same time that it did start, 10 years later, who can say? But I do believe that again, in this what if scenario, we wouldn't have gotten any of the movies we have currently until way later. I don't know. This is just, again, I guess just it was one of those things that kind of got my mind racing. And just being a movie fan, kind of thinking from a business standpoint, if I was a movie executive or something like that, what I would have done, and I definitely would have done Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four way before, again, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, or any of those characters. But yeah, this is just like a little what if MCU idea that I decided to record and upload because, what the hell, why not? But yeah, that pretty much wraps this up. Hopefully you all have enjoyed, and really curious to hear what you all think on this what if scenario. Like, do you think that MCU would have even happened at all? Or do you think it would have started completely different? Like, maybe they still would have started with Iron Man and built up to Avengers and then branched off into, like, the X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, or... Again, there's an endless possibilities. So let me know what you all thought in the comments section below, and before I wrap this up, as always, you can like us on Facebook at PastyPal PastyPal Productions, for news updates and all things kind of adjacent to PastyPal Productions. Usually repost Jordan's podcast, Reverend Spaceman's podcast that they all have, which I'll leave links in the description below. And of course, just all things kind of upcoming things with PastyPal Productions here on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, PastyPalPro. You can follow me on Twitter at IrishmanJake. And again, Jordan's podcast, Smile Banner Movie Minutes, on Podbean and iTunes. And again, I'll leave a description. A link in the description below to that, and to Reverend Spaceman's YouTube channel, where he does a podcast with Jordan where it's all about toy collecting. And he also does one with Dave called Out of the Loop, where they talk about movies that everyone's seen but they haven't, and just why it's taken them 20 years to see an iconic movie like Fight Club or something like that. And again, we're almost at 200 subscribers, so why don't you subscribe if you haven't already. Help us get to 200 subscribers by the end of the year, and maybe we'll do like a live stream or some kind of big event type deal to celebrate you all supporting us for all this time. So yeah, you always continue liking, commenting, sharing with your friends, and subscribe. We really appreciate it, and that wraps this up. So until next time, everyone, cheers.